On April 26, 2003, Crystal Judson was shot by her husband. She had just filed for divorce on the basis of domestic violence. Crystal later passed away from the injuries inflicted by her husband, but her story is not an isolated incident. Domestic violence is already difficult to prosecute, but there was something else preventing her from leaving. Her husband was the police chief.
Many studies have found that the romantic partners of police officers suffer domestic abuse rates that are significantly higher than the general population at large. It's particularly problematic when the domestic abusers are the same individuals that are called by women when they are being abused in their homes.
They have nowhere to turn, and as you've seen in Crystal's case, a tragedy will occur if they don't have anyone to listen to them.
If there's any job that domestic abuse should disqualify a person from holding, isn't it the one job that gives you a lethal weapon, trains you to stalk people without their noticing, and relies on your judgment and discretion to protect the abused against domestic abusers?
Since police are necessary for victims to get the recourse that they need, addressing this problem is a matter of improving the way that police address domestic violence in general, and specifically when the abuser is one of their own.
The 17-year veteran of the Medina Police Department says under Ohio's revised code, his officers will consider factors like past history, the relationship of the parties involved, and then decide whether to take action.
Our purpose in responding to these calls is to end the violence, determine who the primary aggressor is, and make an arrest.
But Kinney admits prosecuting offenders often proves difficult, with victims refusing to testify. That's why every officer is equipped with a body camera he or she turns on when responding to calls.
But tackling the occurrence of domestic violence itself is only part of the problem. Not only must services be provided for current and past victims, but law enforcement agencies must partner with other agencies and community organizations to provide the most comprehensive and safe experience for victims.
There's all kinds of things we can do, but one of them is we need to get the people working in the arena together. The cops ought to be side by side with the prosecutors, side by side with the advocates, side by side with the nonprofits.
The law enforcement, the court, the community resources, the battered women's shelter. There's several community resources that all need to work together.
It is agreed that partnerships must be formed within communities to better serve victims of domestic violence. These external agencies would hold police departments accountable for mishandling cases relating to their own officers.
The first way we could do that, we set up the initial center in the basement of the county city building, the first floor of the county city building, and got the prosecutors from my office, newly formed domestic violence unit, together with the sheriff's officers from their domestic violence unit, together with advocates from our office.
System called the Crystal Clear Act to give spouses of police officers a place other than a police department to file their domestic violence complaint.
The International Association for Chiefs of Police, or IACP, offered a policy document that aimed to minimize officer-involved domestic violence. It covered revision of screening, training, and protocols within precincts that would circumvent the hiring of those at high risk of becoming abusive. Unfortunately, the document was only enacted in very few police departments because of the lack of the legal ramifications of ignoring it. The screening process for potential officers must be more vigorous. Incidences of irrationality and violence in the pasts of prospective officers must be properly looked into, and the officers must be assessed for their fitness for law enforcement. This will not only increase the overall mental fitness of the police force, but it will prevent people who are likely to misuse the privileges that their job provides them from getting the job in the first place. By accepting the recommendations of the IACP, creating new screening measures and ensuring that they will be enforced, partnering with external agencies that provide support for victims and accountability for police officers, and changing the protocols around the investigation of domestic abuse, the rates of domestic violence among families of police officers will decrease. There will be less police officers who are being abusive to their families, and more victims who will be empowered and better able to leave their abusive situations.